Welcome to the Albuquerque Journal Midweek Blitz High School Football Show with your hosts, James Yodice and Geoff Grammer.
Education and training at Western New Mexico University is accessible from every corner of the land of enchantment, providing limitless opportunities towards success for more than a century. And now, through the New Mexico Opportunity Scholarship, tuition and fees are covered for anyone looking to start or start over. Along with free tuition, books are always included for every WNMU student, assuring your only worry is how far you can actually go. Lift off toward your future and endless potential at WNMU today.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Geoff Grammer with the Albuquerque Journal, and this is the Midweek Blitz, our high school football podcast at the Albuquerque Journal, joined as always by our high school preps guru, James Yodice. James, how you doing?
Jeffrey, all is well.
We are in week 6 now of the high school football season already. I know
it's hump week.
It is hump week. This
is
the
middle of the 11 weeks. Yep.
Tell me kind of where... A quick snapshot on where we are at Hump Week. Is it what you expected? What's the biggest surprise? I'm kind of shooting from the hip here, not on our rundown, but what surprised you the most so far?
I think that we've seen a lot of parity in the Class 6A division. We had another week this last weekend where half of the top 10 in the coaches poll in 6A all got beat. This is the second time this has happened like in 3 weeks. So we're seeing some more volatility. It's great. I love it. We're not seeing any one team clearly take, the lead here. Cleveland, I think, is still the best team, and I think everybody feels that way. But we're seeing a good bit of versatility and teams beating each other up and down the rankings. I like that. I like when we don't have one clear, great team leading the way. It's fun when we've got teams that show some vulnerability, as Cleveland did, losing to Artesia last week. Even though Cleveland was far from 100%, they were missing 2 incredibly key players, one on offense, one on defense. But it's good to see some vulnerability from all of these teams, whether it's at the top with the top 3 like Cleveland, La Cueva, Centennial, that next group of teams, which would include teams like Volcano, Rio Rancho, teams like that. So I really like that part of it. The other thing I would say, it revolves around Bernalillo, although we'll get into more of that about them in a second, because they're the last remaining undefeated team we have in the metro area, which I don't think I've ever spoken those words before out loud. And we'll talk more about them in a minute. That was the other thing during the first half that really surprised me, at least if we're talking about the metro area.
All right, well, as we sit here in week 6, the show last week had a lot of news to it. We're going to put a bow on some of that news right now, and that revolved around Belen and Valley and the NMAA's offseason news, which was they were implementing the 2 strikes rule. Both of those schools got hit with the strike for a on-field fight. Why don't you kind of give us an update on what's going on with that?
So since our last podcast, which we did last Tuesday, Valley still has a strike. Belen still has a strike. But after reviewing some game film that was submitted by Valley, the NMAA ruled that Valley would have enough players, even after a good number of ejections, Valley would still have enough players to play their game this week against Los Lunas. Previously, the NMAA had ruled that they would have to forfeit that game. Valley apparently will have enough players to play this week. That is one thing. The second thing is Belen has appealed to the NMAA about getting a strike. They want to get its strike overturned. Now, as you and I sit here, it's Tuesday afternoon. On Wednesday morning, the NMAA Board of Directors has their first meeting of the school year. This is going to be addressed tomorrow as we're sitting here, and they will hear Belen's appeal or discuss it about whether they should overturn it or not. I don't think the chances of it being overturned are very good, but Belen felt like Valley got some preferential treatment by being allowed to play its game this week at Los Lunas. And so Belen, that didn't sit very well with Belen. I talked to their superintendent the other day. He said he felt like it wasn't equitable, and so therefore they're going to go to the NMAA's board and hopefully get their strike overturned. Like I said, I don't see any way that's going to happen. And Belen can't get the game it forfeited back. That was last week against Deming. That will stand as well. But I think Belen wants to challenge a bit what constitutes a strike. And believe me, not everybody likes this 2 strikes rule. Not everybody likes the way it's written, and not everybody likes the lack of clarity that it has. That is one thing Belen feels. they want to see the game film that the NMAA reviewed in allowing Valley to play this week. That's one thing their superintendent, Belin's superintendent, Lawrence Sanchez, told me. They want to see the actual film that the NMAA used to change or revise their ruling on Valley. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know how much discussion we'll get out of this tomorrow or not. Of course, I'll be at the board meeting tomorrow morning. I don't know what we'll get out of it, but this is really the first time that we're seeing a school officially step forward and kind of challenge this 2 strikes bylaw. So, like I said, it may amount to nothing. It may amount to something. I don't know. We'll know more by this time tomorrow.
All right. Well, we will. I guess I wanted to put a bow on that story this week. It won't quite be this week, but by next week we should know what the final fallout from that fight between Belen and Valley is, and hopefully we don't have to worry about too many more strike against schools and programs and fan bases. But we shall see. Obviously, week 6 of the season is, as you pointed out, kind of the hump week of the season. We're right in the middle, starting to face the back end now, the home stretch. But last week had some big games, maybe not in terms of Class 6A versus Class 6A, but one game in particular might have, in some people's estimation, determined who might be the best team in the state right now. Now, there's some qualifiers there and some context to put. But Artesia did beat Cleveland. Tell us about that game.
Yeah, and I'm fairly certain this is the first time Artesia has beaten Cleveland in football, and they've played a few times. And they beat them 36-34 the other day, which is a fantastic win for Artesia. They've been trying to get over the hump. Cleveland has been putting it to them pretty regularly whenever they've played. So Artesia wins this game the other day, and they led the whole way. I don't think they trailed even once in this game. Cleveland was on their heels the whole way. This is a fantastic win for Artesia. There's no other way to say it. And I'm not going to detract from their win in any way, but you must also point out, I have to point out, Cleveland was missing the best player in the state, Stratton Schufelt, their linebacker, their senior linebacker, did not play. He's got an ankle problem. He did not play. Believe me when I tell you, he makes a huge difference. And they were missing a key wide receiver who had scored 4 touchdowns, I think, the week before or the week before that, named Carter Weddle. Who is going to be out for a while because he's injured as well. So Cleveland was not necessarily at 100%. And I have to mention that. Like I said, I hate necessarily doing it that way because this win does not come with an asterisk, but you can't talk about this win without mentioning the fact that they're missing 2 absolutely dynamic players. So Cleveland's playing them maybe at 80, 85% full strength as opposed to 100. But having said that, this is I've seen Artesia. This is a tremendous win. They are extremely talented. They're underrated on defense, and this offense remains as dynamic as it ever has been. So, great win for Artesia. And it's hard to say that about Artesia because you just expect them to do this,
right? And
for them to beat Cleveland finally, that is a great trophy for them to finally get that team.
So who's the best team in the state right now? Is it Artesia? Is it Cleveland?
It's still Cleveland.
Is it somebody else?
It's still Cleveland, and I'm not trying to anger the Artesia people because I don't have a single negative thing to say about Artesia. They're fantastic top to bottom. But I think if Cleveland plays Artesia at full strength, Cleveland beats them. But is Artesia maybe the second best team? I don't know. It's so weird. I was looking at the new computer poll today. Yep. And Artesia was 5 overall last week behind Cleveland, Roswell, who's in their district, Centennial, and La Cueva. Artesia jumped over all those teams this week and moved into number 1 overall. Now, the Max Preps breaks it down by classification, but they also have an overall poll. And Artesia is now the number 1 ranked team ahead of everybody else, including Roswell, who they jumped over. So, beating Cleveland obviously gained them an unbelievable amount of points, especially in terms of strength of schedule in their ranking. Sure. So, yeah, I'm hesitant to call Artesia the best overall team. I would not say that, but
they put themselves in the conversation, though.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, if you put all of these teams together, Artesia and Roswell and Centennial and La Cueva and Cleveland, and just had the 5 of them play each other for a month and a half, who knows what we might get? Right. Who knows if you had all of them? If they had one team playing the other 4 over a 5-week period, who knows what Who knows what we might get? At Roswell is a fantastic team. We've talked about them on this podcast last week. Yeah. So, boy, I'm hesitant to assign Artesia as the best team, but this gets back to what I said at the start. We're seeing some volatility. We're seeing some teams that showing some vulnerability. Cleveland's got 2 losses already, and they're playing the best team on their schedule probably this week in Friendship, Texas. So you've got some teams that are showing that they can be had, and that's what you want. When we get to the playoffs, you want teams thinking, hey, whoever's there, we can get them. That's what I like to see as a reporter when we get out to these playoffs. So, no, I would not call Artesia the best team 1A. I would say, like I said, I know this, and I'm really desperately trying not to upset Artesia's fan base because, this is a tremendous win. But does Artesia beat them if Cleveland's at full strength? In my opinion, no. That doesn't mean that they would or wouldn't.
But
but, man, definitely in the conversation.
All right, a couple other games I want to kind of bullet point from last week that were certainly notable. Volcano Vista beat Sandia, and Sandia was the last 6A unbeaten team. And I know you were able to speak with running back Elijah Gonzalez after that game.
So we're visiting with Elijah Gonzalez, Volcano Vista's running back. Another big night for you, Elijah. $184 unofficially. Tell me, you've had a tremendous first half. What do you attribute that to?
The line. They're the dogs in the trenches. They get the blocks out for me. I can't do it without them.
You're very much a workhorse running back.
Yes,
I get the sense you're one of those players that loves to have the ball in his hands, no matter how many carries it is.
Yeah, I want to do whatever I could do for the team. Help them win. I'm not doing it all myself. I have the whole team. They're supporting me. They're getting those blocks, and I can't do anything without them.
Now you've been over 100, I think, now in 4 of your 5 games. I think you're coming up on about 800 yards for the season.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about that kind of production, you guys running the ball that well.
It's different. We don't have Elliott. We don't have Tristan. We don't have Trispin. We don't have any of those guys. So other people have to step up. And luckily, the line this year, they're doing their job. And, we love running the ball. We love running down people's throats.
So let's talk about taking on Sandia tonight. You gave them their first loss. Your defense played great. Those last 2 scores were not really against the starters. Talk to me about how well this defense is playing.
Oh, those defense are dogs. They when we can't score, they score for us. So they get those stops that we need. No, they do. They're the ones that help us win games.
How did you guys rebound from the loss to La Cueva?
A lot of people got hurt that game, including me. But it's focus. We weren't really focused or locked in that game. We didn't play as well as we need to, but we're going to work on that, and we're going to come back at them.
All right, so you were at that game. We just heard from Elijah. I'm curious what's your takeaway from that game?
Yeah, that was my first look at Volcano. Good ground game. They really with Gonzalez running the ball, I think he ran for about $184, I think, and most of that was in the first 3 quarters when this game was decided. A good physical team. They're not as dynamic as they were the last several years, and that's mostly because they're just different at quarterback. They've had some tremendous quarterbacks over the last half dozen years or so. So Volcano is still a team that's evolving. This is a good defense. They got a good group of linebackers. You have a good group of linebackers, a good running game, man, you're going to have a chance against most anyone. So yeah, I was impressed with Volcano. Sandia still has a ways to go. Yeah. It's no mark against them that they lost to Volcano. This is still going to be a team that's going to be in the hunt for the playoffs.
I'm going to rapid fire these next 4 games I want to ask you about last week. La Cueva beat up on a pretty good Los Lunas team.
Yeah, La Cueva beat them 45-6. It was 28-0 at halftime. I think they intercepted Los Lunas 3 times in the first half. One of them, I think, was a pick 6. They had a kickoff return for a score. La Cueva looked really good. Their defense looked, and I've seen La Cueva several times now, the defense was as good as I've seen them look so far this year. So that's a strong win for La Cueva, who's now trending in the right direction. They've won a couple of games in a row. They beat Volcano Vista last week. They beat Los Lunas. The week before they beat Los Lunas last week. So, yeah, La Cueva looks like they've gotten things straightened out.
West Mesa puts up 74 points and has just a monster performance. Why don't you tell us about West Mesa's game?
Yeah, so West Mesa beats Atrisco Heritage 74-36. Elijah Brody, the senior quarterback from West Mesa, rushes for 7 scores, throws for an 8th.
Insane. And
this is a game West Mesa had circled for a long time. Atrisco Heritage beat them 59-54 last year. That was a game that kept West Mesa out of the playoffs. So West Mesa's been just eager to get back at this team, which they did. And West Mesa is now 4-1. Their only loss is to Volcano Vista, a game that got called after 3 quarters because of lightning, and they were only down 2 scores in that game. So West Mesa had a great first half. Looking forward to seeing them in the second half.
You mentioned this team earlier, but Bernalillo beats Moriarty 14-7. Bernalillo is undefeated.
Bernalillo, I can't believe I'm saying this, is the last undefeated football team we have in the metro area, which I'm sure is a first. Matter of fact, I bet a week's pay that's probably never happened before. So, yeah, Bernalillo's had a fantastic first half, and this defense they have has been tremendous. This is the second game they've won this year where they won scoring 14 points or less. They beat Valley in the opener, I think, 12-6. So this defense has really been outstanding. They're not, offensively, I wouldn't say they're a tremendously dynamic team. They've got some weapons, but, boy, this defense is going to keep them in every game And, they've got a big game coming up against Los Alamos, who is also 5-0. Not this coming week, but next week. I believe Los Alamos is down here to play Bernalillo. And what a fun game that might be.
Last one I want to ask you about from last week, El Dorado, big comeback against Clovis.
Oh, yeah. So I've been thinking about it since the game. Now, to recap, El Dorado was down 49-20 at halftime. And, I mean, Clovis did whatever it wanted to do in the first two quarters. And then El Dorado came out and was just a completely different team. They outscored Clovis 44-7 in the second half. They win it with 30 seconds left and win the game 64-56. I've seen a lot of prep football in my career, and I've thought a lot about it over the last several days. I just don't recall another game in my whole career that I've witnessed personally,
right,
in which one team not only came from that far behind, but just looked so different from one half to the next. Clovis had a lot of guys going both ways. It was a warm day on Saturday at Wilson Stadium. Clovis had quite a few guys going both ways that you could clearly see they were cramping up and they were fatigued in the second half. And El Dorado really took advantage of that. But still, to be up 29, it's hard to imagine. I just could not. I was so bored at halftime, I thought, boy, this is just not the game I expected.
Right.
And then what do we get? We get a second half for the ages. That's a legendary performance. Crazy. And El Dorado just scored 64 points 2 weeks ago and didn't win. They lost on a Hail Mary to Atrisco Heritage. They come back and score 64 in this game. That's just, yeah, I'm watching this and I'm just shaking my head. I'm like, I have no explanation for it, to see one team get so thoroughly dominated in one half and then completely flip the script and do the same in the second half. I've covered a lot of shootouts, but usually it's a lot of back and forth, not one team dominating in the first half and the other team dominating in the second half. It was crazy stuff. I'm laughing even still because I still can't believe I saw it. 29 points down in the second half, and they come back and win this game.
I am curious how many games this year are going to end up, especially at the big school level, well into the 60s. I mean, there's been a lot already, and I kind of have a feeling there's going to be plenty more.
We've had several, yeah. Offenses they've just taken over. It's rare at the 6A level you see a defense be dominant. It does happen, but we're seeing it less and less, I think, as offenses become more evolved. All these high school coaches are watching these NFL games. They're watching these college games. They're picking up every little tidbit and intricate play and trick play they can think of, and taking it down to the high school level. So these offenses are still playing downhill, relatively speaking, to the defense.
All right, let's move on to some stars of the week. We recap every week the vote that we have on abqjournal.com, and we do ask readers to log on and share on social media our Star of the Week poll. This week, James nominated 11 players, and we're going to run down really quickly. We'll say a little bit more about the top four here, but those nominated that James had for the Star of the Week last week: Robert Martinez, junior wide receiver from Tatum; Trell Griego, senior quarterback, Farmington; DeMarcus Thompson, senior wide receiver, defensive end and outside linebacker from Lovington; Elijah Gonzalez, senior running back, Volcano Vista; Marcus Sharp, senior running back, West Mesa; Aiden Harrington, junior quarterback, Valencia; and Elijah Brody, as we mentioned already, he of the 8 touchdowns in a game fame, Elijah Brody, senior quarterback, West Mesa. Now, these next 4 were our top vote getters this week in the Albuquerque Journal's High School Star of the Week. I'm going to read them in reverse order, ending with our winner of the week. And let's start with Mason Espinda McChristen, senior wide receiver, free safety from Bernalillo. He caught both of the Spartans' touchdown passes in a crucial 14-7 victory Friday against visiting Moriarty. He also deflected a pass on defense, registered a sack, and had 9 tackles. Amari Mumba, junior running back, Highland. Mumba went wild on Friday night for the Hornets, rushing 21 times for 210 yards and 4 touchdowns, and a pair of 2-point conversions in Highland's 54-32 win over Del Norte. McKay Burtonshaw, senior strong safety, La Cueva. Burtonshaw picked off 2 first-half passes for the Bears against Los Lunas in a pivotal first half that saw the Bears' defense pitch a shutout against the Tigers. And the winner for the week, with 41.5% of the vote, and again, as I've mentioned in past shows, this is not just 20, 30, 40 votes. This is getting into the thousands of votes every week. And with 41.5% of the vote, Ethan Kahn, junior wide receiver from Artesia, Con had a huge night against Cleveland's secondary, catching 9 passes for 195 yards and a touchdown in the Bulldogs' 36-34 victory over the Storm on Friday night at the Bulldog Bowl. So, James, I will ask you any other individuals you want to point out, or just give a reminder as to how you might be able to get your name on this list every week.
Yeah, no other players I think I'd want to mention, except for J.P. Ludi, the running back from El Dorado, who had over 220 rushing yards in that win over Clovis, I think, and he had 4 touchdowns. He was really effective. He had a couple of 2-point conversion runs as well. I didn't put him on the list, and I probably should have, so I wanted to make a quick shout-out to him. Of course, the way El Dorado's scoring, all their players could be on this list every week. I would just remind anybody that's listening, look, if you've got a player that had a big night, offensively, defensively, both special teams, get it to me. You can find me at Twitter at James D. Yodice. My email account is on there as well. Give me this kid's information by Saturday afternoon. If you had a game Friday night or Thursday night, and if you have a game Saturday afternoon and you have somebody that's keeping stats, get it to me as quickly as you can. I can't promise that everybody's going to make the list, but it's 100% certain that they won't make the list if I don't know about them. So I would just encourage coaches or anybody that's listening from a certain school to encourage their stat keepers, assistant coaches, head coaches. If you have somebody that had a big game, try and get it to me as soon as you can on Saturday. We finalize this list. I put together an initial list on Friday night, then I finalize it on Saturday afternoon. So if you get it to us by late afternoon on Saturday, if they're worthy, we'll put them on the list. So it's growing. I like that. We're getting kids from a lot of different cities around the state. I want it to keep expanding. I want to get as many teams involved as we can. It will never be 100%, but that's the way they should do it.
No, but this is a good way to get names and some recognition out there for a lot of these performances. So we do hope that a lot of people will participate not only in the voting, but in the letting us know ahead of time.
Right,
so.
And that's the fun part is it's not just a list. You actually get to go on and vote for this. And fan bases, I'm glad that some of them are being really engaged with this on our website. I love that. And that's what we want. It's not just a list of kids who did well, but you actually have a chance to reward them by voting for them in our poll, which goes live, I believe, on Sunday, and the voting closes, Tuesday, I believe. Yeah. So, they have a chance to get in there and vote for their kid.
All right, we're going to wrap up with our last segment here. We're just going to kind of look ahead to the Week 6 games, the teams worth a mention, and some of the top games this week. I know I looked at, in Sunday's Albuquerque Journal, your list of the top games of the week, but I'm going to have you just go ahead and run down what you think are the big games of the week.
Yeah, it starts at Cleveland. Now, Cleveland's home this week to play Friendship, Texas. Friendship was one of the 2 teams that beat Cleveland last year. This is a good team. I was talking to Cleveland's coach, Robert Garza. This is a team with several Division I athletes, including a couple of D1 wide receivers. This is going to be a really tough test, probably even more than Artesia was. So this is a really fascinating matchup. Cleveland hopes to have Stratton Schufelt back this week. I don't think they would rush it because this is their last non-district game. So everything, for most teams, this being hump week, pretty much everybody's getting ready for district now. Some teams still have a non-district game next week in week 7, but quite a few districts are going to be starting to play their league schedule starting next week. So you wouldn't want to risk getting any of your studs hurt unnecessarily. But I do believe Stratton is expected back this week. Just down the road, we got Farmington coming to town to play Rio Rancho. That was a surprising loss to me against Hobbs last week. Hobbs had lost 3 in a row coming in here, albeit to Artesia and Roswell and Lovington, their 4A rival down the road. But Hobbs picked up their best win of the year, beat Rio Rancho 24-21. Now Farmington comes to town with Trell Griego, that really big quarterback, to play Rio Rancho. This is a big game. This has seeding implications all over it. That's the game I'll be at on Friday. Robertson and Dexter is a 3A game. Dexter is the only undefeated team in Class 3A, and they had the second biggest comeback last week, and they came from way back to beat Yodice, I think 44-42 last week. So these are 2 of the top 3 ranked teams in 3A. I believe Dexter is 1 and Robertson is 3 in the latest coaches poll that came out today. So that's a fantastic game. We got Goddard at Gadsden. Goddard's coming off a home loss to Piedra Vista, which surprised me. Piedra Vista was 0-4, came into Roswell, beat Goddard 21-7 last week. Now Goddard travels to Gadsden. Gadsden's had a very good season so far, very good. So this is a really good 5A matchup between 2 playoff teams for sure. Lovington and Artesia is a favorite matchup of mine always. I still remember I covered the last state championship game in New Mexico that was a tie. 1987, Lovington played in Artesia. I'm sorry, Artesia played in Lovington. It was a scoreless tie. You want to talk about a hard game to write. That was, and matter of fact, that was the game that got the NMAA and the state to change their overtime rules for the playoffs, for the championship games. Obviously, you need to have overtime and a winner in the earlier rounds, so you have teams advance. But at that point, score any game, whether it was tied 21-21 or 0-0, it was a co-champion that year in 87.
They only have one trophy there to hold up after the game.
It was
a
really,
pictures.
now of course this is 36 years ago, but I still remember that game to this day. Wow. It was a very strange game, but that game got the rule changed in New Mexico to make sure that overtime is in the championship round. We had a definite winner and a definite loser. So Lovington and Artesia play on Saturday, and Lovington is really good. They're ranked, I think, number 3 in 4A. They beat Hobbs. This is a good team. So this should be a fun matchup here. Artesia, I think, still has more firepower, but that's still a fun matchup. And then lastly, of course, Volcano Vista playing El Dorado. That's Saturday morning, 11 a.m. at Wilson Stadium. El Dorado with this offense, these two receivers, Josiah Mitchell, Josh Jackson, and this quarterback, Brandon Olivas, who's thrown for 17 touchdowns in his last 3 games, plus the J.P. Ludi kid I mentioned a minute ago. Yeah. That offense against this group of Volcano Vista linebackers, this is going to be a fun matchup.
All right. Looks like another week of good games that we'll be talking about next week. Anything else you want to put a bow on for this week?
No, I think we're good.
All right. Well, I appreciate, James, your knowledge as always, and I appreciate you guys for listening to the Midweek Blitz, our high school football podcast here on the Albuquerque Journal Podcast Network. And it is one of 2 podcasts that we have going right now. We also have a Lobo basketball-centric one, Talking Grammar podcast that comes out on Tuesdays. This one's coming out each Wednesday. Appreciate you for listening. You can always give us feedback at Geoff Grammer on Twitter, or ggrammar@abqjournal.com is my email. James Yodice is James D. Yodice at James D. Yodice on Twitter, and Yodice at abqjournal.com you can email. So let us know. Give us some feedback on these shows and some tips for some future show ideas that you may want to see us talk about. For now, thanks for listening. And remember, with the Albuquerque Journal Podcast Network, read, hear, and watch.
Education and training at Western New Mexico University is accessible from every corner of the land of enchantment, providing limitless opportunities towards success for more than a century. And now, through the New Mexico Opportunity Scholarship, tuition and fees are covered for anyone looking to start or start over. Along with free tuition, books are always included for every WNMU student. Assuring your only worry is how far you can actually go. Lift off toward your future and endless potential at WNMU today.